Evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to this hybrid overview and scrutiny meeting, and just to remind you, the meeting is being broadcasted and recorded. Now to the first item on the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, I have apologies from Victoria Hill, the Parent Governor Rep.
I can see the members of the Commission who are in attendance in the Council chamber, and their names will be recorded in the minutes. Please, Louise, can you confirm if any councillors are joining remotely and if those councillors can confirm their attendance when Louise calls your name?
Yes. Bear with me, Chair. If I call out your name, please can you respond? Tina Mackenzie-Boyle.
Present, Chairman.
Nahida Jazz. She's put her hand
Yes,
up.
present online.
Thank you. And Councillor Temperton.
Present.
Thank you. That's it, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 is to approve as a correct record of the minutes of the Commission held on the 24th of May 2023. Is any councillor happy to second the motion? Please can members indicate if you have an issue with the accuracy?
Councillor Welch, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, councillor. Nobody's indicated they have any other issues, therefore I take that as agreed. The full text for declarations of interest is set out on the agenda at item number 3. If any member has a disclosable pecuniary interest or an affected interest to declare, please indicate and I will come to you in turn. Can I please remind anyone who declares a disclosable pecuniary interest that when we get to that item you'll need to leave the meeting and I'll contact you to advise you when you can rejoin. Can I ask Democratic Services to remind me when we get to the relevant item? The fourth item on the agenda is consideration of any urgent items.
No, Chair, we haven't had any urgent items.
The fifth item on the agenda is public participation. Do we have anyone requesting to attend under the public participation rules?
No, Chair, we haven't had anyone indicate that.
Agenda item 6, Statutory Scrutiny Officer Report. This is a report to draw your attention to ways of working for Commission members in the future. Would the Statutory Scrutiny Officer please talk us through the recommendations in this report? And just before I pass over to you, Kevin, if you could confirm whether you'd like questions as we go or at the end, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think what I will do, Chair, is I have 2 reports to present to the committee, and as it's the first of this administration, I wanted to just do a very quick overview presentation for members. So if I can hold questions to the end of that presentation and then formally reintroduce the report for members to then consider in terms of decision making, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Thank you, yes.
So, Chair, I'm just going to share a presentation with the Commission. And hopefully, as Commission members, none of this should be a surprise to you. But as I said, because it is the first meeting in public, I thought it'd be useful just to reintroduce some of the issues and some of the items in terms of the background to the report in front of you. So, Chair, as the Executive Director of Delivery, I also hold the Statutory Scrutiny Officer role, which is the professional advisor to the Commission and panels. And I am supported in that role with Louise Conley, who's sitting beside you, Anne Moore, who's the Assistant Director of Democratic Services, who provides the statutory role of Registration Officer, and Sanjay Prasher, who is our Monitoring Officer, although we only really call on Sanjay if there is an issue which requires the Monitoring Officer's attention. So I just wanted to just run through just the basics in terms of what is scrutiny, what are the powers of the scrutiny panel and my role, and then talk to the work programme. And as members are aware, you've got the last annual report of the last 4-year administration. So hopefully you've got a sense then of what are the key things that have been looked at previously, but also what the process is going forward in terms of what you'll be looking to move forward with in the next few months or so. So the key thing I think around open scrutiny is it's about good governance. Good governance is achieved by having efficient and effective decision-making processes and systems. And using appropriate policies and accountability frameworks enable councils to focus on strategy rather than operational issues. It's the strategy of the council, it's the policies of the council which are really important to get right. And then that allows officers to move forward with operationalising those. So officers make sure that those things get done, but it's members who set that strategic framework. And good governance means that we're clearing that framework, and the review process and the scrutiny process is to enable us to make sure that their issues are being looked at and that policy is as clear as possible. In terms of the feedback from the annual governance statement, and the other governance statement is a document that the monitoring officer produces to give the council assurance that it's acting effectively in its delivery of services. We've a specific remark for Overview and Scrutiny Commission in that Overview and Scrutiny has established a structure that allows activity to be better aligned with the themes of the council plan. The function has established and delivered against a work programme that supports the council's objectives. The Commission has carried out research, made recommendations to support the council's climate change targets, and has scrutinised the budget and monitored the performance of all council departments through the council overview, council plan overview report. And I bring that to the attention of members just really to make sure that it's absolutely clear that scrutiny is absolutely vital to good and effective decision making, but also to make sure that what is happening within the borough, and particularly where public services are delivered, they're delivered as most effectively as possible in line with the objectives of the council. So scrutiny has been with us for some time, and has been an effective part of decision making across the whole of the local government landscape for those councils which choose to have an executive and a scrutiny function. The key things, I think, in terms of the effective scrutiny is it provides a critical friend and challenge to the organisation and the organisations who are making decisions within the borough. It amplifies the voices and concerns of the public and is led by independently minded people responsible for delivering the role. And that obviously is yourselves as the Commission. And it's there to drive improvements in public services. The principal power of scrutiny is about influence. It's about how bringing evidence-based decision making to the organisation is vital to making good decisions. It's about gathering evidence, and it's about presenting that evidence in public so that not only do members have a chance to review and understand why we're making a decision or what a policy direction is, but gives them the opportunity for the public to participate in that process and feel engaged in that process. Scrutiny can investigate any issue that affects the local area, and scrutiny's soft influence in power is the ability to bring attention to issues. It has no formal power to compel anyone to make any changes, but it's most effective where it is able to build positive working relationships, where that evidence base allows decision makers to make the best possible decisions. And what we found within Bracknell Forest is the ability to look at issues in detail and bringing those to decision makers has been really effective in allowing the council to move forward in a way which is effective, and that transparency is part of that process, but also that delivery, that we can see those changes that scrutiny has suggested are on the ground and are improving people's lives. My role as the statutory scrutiny officer is to provide that technical and professional advice to the Commission and to the panels to make sure that, one, that the service, the function is effective, but also to make sure that we stay within the bounds of what is the right and appropriate way of delivering the scrutiny function for the council. There are always going to be nuanced conversations. Sometimes it's about the scope, sometimes it's about the ability to have influence. So what I would hope that I will bring to conversations with the Commission is the ability to use my experience as a senior local government officer and as part of the corporate management team to make sure that you're as well advised as possible of what's going on in the organisation, what's going on across the national landscape, but also to give you access to information and people that perhaps it would be really difficult for anyone who's new to the organisation or new to local government to be able to navigate. So my role is really around that sort of advisor, guider, and making sure that actually your voice is heard in all of those spaces which are important. I have a responsibility for promoting overview and scrutiny, and that's not just promoting it to yourselves, but also to all members, to the executive and to the officers of the council. I take that role slightly wider to make sure that in all of those public spaces that will include the police, the health service and our blue light services, that they understand that scrutiny within Bracknell Forest is really important in terms of, one, enable them to tell their story about how their services are delivered, but two, to make sure that those services have got the that critical friend, that oversight to look at what's their priorities, how's that policy working on the ground, and to bring that intelligence back to them on an evidence-based approach. We are just in the process of pulling together the council plan, and the council plan is the backbone of the work we will do in terms of reviews of services. The council plan not only sets out the direction of the council, but it is a melding of the manifesto of the majority group, the work that we've done in terms of working with communities, in terms of bringing their voice into that conversation, but also the work of the officers who've been working on their community plan for some time. So as we bring that together, part of the role of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission will be to look at the performance against the council plan, but also there will be issues which come out of the corporate plan which need some deep dive or in-depth investigation. And that's where scrutiny really adds value to the process of managing the organisation. I think I'm going to just say that slide's really just what I've just said, that you've seen the workshops with staff, with managers, with senior leaders and the corporate management team, but also with the lead administration, with councillors, and also around the community themselves. This slide will need to be updated and will be updated as we go through the programme, but the Commission obviously has 3 panels which report into it. Those Commission areas will be determined by the council plan, and what we'll be looking to do as we go through that process is to determine what are the things that are within each scope of those teams, and making sure that we've got a clear programme over the 4 years of the council plan of reviewing services. This is an example drawn from the last annual report, which is before the Commission, and you can see that the programme, each element is separate, so we try to not run multiple reviews at the same time, and that's partly because we engage the whole of the members of the council in those reviews. So rather than having people competing for time for different reviews, that we do make sure that we have a clear programme that we're able to resource, and we're able to bring forward those elements of feedback and suggestions to the council in a structured way over the 4 years of the administration. Just drawn from your report, just seeing the resources which are available from the Democratic Services team, we do make sure that the function is well resourced. Part of my role is to report back to full council to ensure that actually scrutiny is both taken seriously and is properly resourced, and I'm able to give assurance to members that at this stage I'm able to give that assurance. Over the last 4 years, we have undertaken a number of reviews, and this slide just talks to the number of reviews and number of hours that we've engaged in scrutiny activity. And you can see that although it varies, there is quite a lot of work that actually comes out, and that's important in terms of that bedrock of making sure that we're constantly engaging the organisation in an improvement journey. But not just as a commission, but also as the different panels. It's really important that those panels are able to have a work programme that they're able to have assurance that they can deliver, but also about how it then results in end reports. And we've been having a process where we're able to bring forward recommendations and then review those recommendations to ensure that those are being taken forward by the organisation. Our structure is that we will, a panel will produce a report, it will come back to the commission will endorse that report, it will then be presented to the executive, and for the executive member and the executive to then take that on board, and then we'll have a sort of a report back process, which will enable the service to see that they've been able to improve from the input of scrutiny, but also for scrutiny itself to feel that it's having an effect across the organisation. And the important part is not just the members involved in that scrutiny activity, but who we engage in that process. So this slide talks to the number of officers who've been involved in panels, but also the number of external bodies and agencies. We have done a mixture of engagements. Some of those have been private meetings with, for instance, care leavers, so they've been able to tell their story. Some of them have been full public meetings where we've engaged with a large section of the community, brought them into the chamber and had a sort of a very large conversation. So what we've been able to do with our arrangements is to be able to engage with a large number of witnesses, which adds to the evidence basis, so that we are making decisions based on the evidence that we're finding on the ground, and that is supported by not only people telling their life stories, but also the fact that we're able to find data to establish what's going on the ground. Drawn in your pack, and really just trying to illustrate the points that I've just raised, is just the process that is gone through in terms of a review. There is there's a step missing at the beginning of this, which is obviously we engage with both members, officers, the public, to establish a sort of a large number of what are the things that people are interested that we should review as a scrutiny function. Those ideas are pulled down into a set of scoping documents, and one of the first things that the Commission will need to do is there'll be more requests for reviews than you've got capacity to deal with. So it will be there'll be a process of reviewing those and prioritising those within each panel, and for each panel to see what are the ones that they're going to recommend to the Commission to be commissioned. And then it's really just getting that programme up and running. We can do reviews which are sort of one and done. So one meeting, take some evidence and pull together a report. Others may need a more in-depth approach. And you'll see at the bottom of this slide that when one of the panels was looking at the introduction of food waste recycling to flats, that actually field visits to go and see bin stores, going to speak to members of the community, going to see how the service works on the ground was really important in terms of being able to then make proper recommendations to that service to be able to take things forward. As I said, at the end of that process of gathering evidence, then a report is drafted by the chair and vice chair of that panel. My colleagues in Democratic Services support in that process, but it is really a member-led process in terms of drafting that report. We try to keep those reports relatively short. So although there's a huge evidence base behind those, what we want is documents which are engaging, that the community can read, and so very short and sharp findings reports that we bring forward to the Commission, and then those are presented onto the executive. We do need to make sure and be mindful of the fact that we are making recommendations. It is within the financial resources of the organisation. So what we're generally looking at is if we are making recommendations which do have financial impact, we do ask our statutory finance officer, so Stuart McKellar, who's the Executive Director of Resources, to look through that review and identify where that additional spend is, so that we're able to, if we are making recommendations to the executive, be clear in is there additional resources being required. But what we've generally found with the reviews is that it's been about a different approach or a different way of using those resources rather than a markup of new resources in and of their own right. And the key thing at the end of it is to make sure that we publicise what we do, so that the public are aware of what we've done in terms of a review, what impact it's going to have on the community, and how we're going to measure that going into the future. So, Chair, just my last slide, really, just in terms of that sort of introduction and sort of process review. The next steps is the council plan will need to be agreed and the new panel scopes agreed by the Commission. So although the council plan will set out what it looks as in terms of the priorities of the organisation, the panels will have an opportunity to look through that and then come to their own scopes of what they think is appropriate. The Commission will need to sign that off. I think we're at the point now, it's about gathering ideas for what could be picked up in terms of review. I think the key space to encourage people's participation is around the community and the general public. How do they get involved? How are they going to pitch ideas? And it may well be that in your role as ward councillors that you'll be able to generate some of those ideas from speaking to people on the doorstep. The council plan in of itself will throw up issues where the executive or the corporate management team will think that an area is ripe for review because it's really important in terms of perhaps a year 2 or year 3 implementation. So it may well be that ideas come from the corporate plan or from the executive themselves in terms of it's an area of policy that they would like a bit of review help on, and that we're able to provide that. Clearly, all members will be engaged with in terms of coming up with ideas, coming up with things that were useful to review, as long as along with the officer corps. As I said, what we would hope to do is have many more areas that we can review than we have capacity, so that we can pick out the best areas where we can have the most impact and there's the strongest evidence base for change. And what we will do as officers is help pull that together into a set of proposals. And Chair, what I think will come from that will be a special meeting of the Commission to start running through those and picking out what will be the ones that we want to take forward. So that is what all I was going to say by way of background. And as I said, Chair, I know that there is a report before the Commission tonight in terms of some recommendations. We are in the process in terms of year 1 of the programme, looking at the capacity within the Commission to be able to undertake its role in both doing reviews and obviously in the year 1 getting started up. There's quite a lot of activity behind the scenes, being able to pull those review documents together and having those conversations, but also in terms of carrying out the Overview and Scrutiny's other role, which is to look at specific documents at specific times. So the council plan overview report will need to be reviewed at least 4 times in the year, and we do need to do some other things. So the recommendations in the report are get to the right page. The recommendations in the report are literally to do the administrative space to be able to set out what would be the municipal calendar for the scrutiny panel for this year. So my recommendation to the Commission is to reduce the number of meetings to 5 this year, which is recommendation 2.1, and to take account of the work undertaken by the previous Overview and Scrutiny Commission, and in effect have a debate now in terms of what that commission did, were the key issues, and hopefully by giving you the space on this report to be able to have that discussion. So at that point, Chair, I will hand back to you, and if there's any questions, I'll take them at that point.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Before we take questions, would first like to welcome Councillor Wright, Councillor Bidwell and Councillor Hayes to this meeting, committee meeting. Does anybody have any questions on what we've just heard?
No questions, but it's a privilege to listen to you. It's Councillor Mrs. Hayes.
Welcome.
Adrian Haftree, this idea of reducing the number of meetings to 5, is that just for this year or is that going on after that as well?
So, Chair, this is the recommendation for just this or municipal year, which will take us up to March next year. I will be proposing that at that stage we'll have a look and see the Commission's capacity to take on more meetings. More may come into the programme, but it's really about setting out our stall of what we can achieve just during this first year of startup.
Anyone else? Okay, on that basis, I'd like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Is that seconded?
Councillor Welch, I second this.
Thank you. Moving to agenda item number 7, overview and scrutiny reports. This is a report to draw your attention to 2 outstanding overview and scrutiny reports, which are due to be presented to the Executive on the 19th of September. Sorry.
I think a proposal was moved and seconded. Are we sort of agreeing that, or are we just moving on to the next bit? Because I thought generally there was a chance for discussion.
Yeah,
Or
I think the
certainly
chair
that we
asked
vote as commission members.
Yeah, so I thought that would be covered off in questions. But if you'd like to add something, please do.
Okay, because I think there's a bit of a difference between a question and a discussion. Can I first of all say I'm fully support, Councillor Barnett, I'm fully supportive of this because I think it's about building capacity, and I think it's really important that we work together to understand the sort of training and support we need, so we can actually not just put together a good work programme, but actually a work programme that really engages with our residents. And I totally recognise that in the first year that we're going to be looking at a range of issues, some of which might be brought up from the panel, some which might be brought up from the emerging council plan and things like that. But I've had the privilege of working in other councils on scrutiny, and I think establishing a good work plan. And also I think the really big thing that I've picked up in recent years is how you bring the voice of residents into your scrutiny reviews. Some there'll be, statutory partners, and others that we'll want to quiz and discuss with. But what I'm increasingly picking up is for it to be effective, certainly in policy development, it's the lived experience of residents encountering a particular service and things like that. Now that can be uncomfortable for everyone, both those that have done things in the past and planning things for the future, but I think that gives credibility and further develops engagement. So I absolutely support the meeting timetable in place, and we'll look with interest at the sort of training and support that we can get to actually do that, so we can maximise this, recognising that overview scrutiny has a range of things that it can do, but historically it's worked well with the executive. I guess one question I've got for you in terms of actually how we're going to go about thinking about how we formulate recommendations, because clearly there's not much point in having a scrutiny review that generates 15 or 16 recommendations, because that kind of dilutes it. But the sort of processes and mechanisms we're going to do, and I know that what some councils do, they have effectively an overview scrutiny away day where the panels and the commission sit down together and actually work through some of the ideas around a work plan, having pulled those in, so they can actually formulate those there. And generally speaking, I think that sort of event should be one where members of the commission and panels can speak freely about those interests and concerns. So I don't know that that's helpful or not.
It is very helpful. Thank you for your contribution.
Do you want me to just clarify? Sorry, it's my fault. The
Yeah.
debate rules are in place. You're absolutely right. So yeah, questions and then debate.
Yeah.
Just for an administrative point of view, I think there's an opportunity for the panels to look at what the scope topics will be
Yeah.
following these meetings. So absolutely, I think that's really important.
But I think the key point I was making was, I think, you know, as overview scrutiny reaches the level of maturity across councils, really being quite open in terms of how we bring the views of residents in, I think is absolutely key. But I absolutely take on board the comment that was made by that the officer made, is it has to be within the capacity and the resources available to the council. I think that's, you know, absolutely key. But then, of course, we know there are a number of ways of actually using the resources we have available in non-statutory areas.
That's a good point.
Okay, thank you very much for your valuable points. Is there anybody else that would like to add to the discussion before we move to number 7?
Councillor Templeton has her hand up.
Yes, please, Councillor Temperton.
I would just like to say I was part of, if you look at the later documents in this and see all what was achieved last year, I was not an executive member then, I was just a backbencher and I was part of a lot of these research. And the one thing about hybrid meetings is the valuable input from all our residents on blue badges, on food waste, on special needs, children, looked after children, all those things it brought in extra, the people, residents and all the rest. And at the end of it, we got very clearly through meetings about 6 or 7 recommendations that each went no more than that really, that was the maximum, usually about 4 or 5, and that went to the executive. And at that time, the executive approved absolutely every one of those recommendations. So it worked really, really well.
Thank you very much. I know we'll all value the expertise we have in the room as we move forward. Councillor Hayes?
Yes, very fine what Mary, Councillor Templeton said. We worked extremely well on what was to do with flats and what was to do with food waste, being such a successful contribution to waste management. And yes, I would really recommend we work as a team on lots of things, particularly planning and the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayes, and we welcome Councillor Tricia Brown to the room. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Hello there, Chairman. Thank you very much indeed. Just to reiterate what the leader has said and Councillor Hayes has said, our panels worked really well and we had much input from our residents on the RSL panel. If I remember, Councillor Templeton was very, very keen on that one. So we went forward and it was very good for our residents and we really relied on our residents witnessing. So yes, I absolutely agree.
Thank you very much, and we welcome also Councillor Watts online. Any
Thank you.
Any other discussion on agenda item number 6? Okay, well, thank you all for your contributions. Moving on to agenda item number 7, overview and scrutiny reports. This is a report to draw your attention to 2 outstanding overview and scrutiny reports, which are due to be presented to the Executive on the 19th of September this year. I will assume you've all read through the report. Kevin, would you please talk us through the recommendations in this report?
Yeah, in terms of the report in front of you, there's 3 recommendations on this report, and if I can just highlight the reason why that is the case. Although the reviews were completed in the last administration, they were not presented to the executive. And so the executive of the last administration has not had an opportunity to review these or to take them forward. However, as the work has been done, as a statutory scrutiny officer, I thought it was important that we'd not lose that work. However, as a commission, you may choose to either endorse the recommendations which are within those reports and have those go forward to the exec. You may actually ask to do a further sort of one and done review of those recommendations and that report. In effect, give yourself an opportunity to go and review what was done and just to make sure that it's in line with this commission's views in terms of what needed to be done and what the recommendations are. Or it may well be that time has passed on those issues, and it may be something that you put the subjects back into the pot to either find space to be re-looked at, or perhaps and to just be closed as a review completed. So it's really the case of we wanted to just make sure that the good and effective work of a number of councillors wasn't lost in the process of a change of administration, but we recognised that this commission never commissioned this piece of work and therefore needed the formal opportunity to look at the work and to then come to a view in terms of the next steps. So, Chair, at that point, I'll take any questions in terms of the officer presentation, and then I'll know you'll move into debate in terms of members then looking at the recommendations and the reports.
Thanks, Kevin. We've got a question from Councillor Bell.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Is it right that this agenda, including the recommendations from the previous committees, has been issued only today? Okay.
No, it's 5 days in advance.
Okay.
Yep.
I've seen it only today, unfortunately.
So I have another question as well. I don't have access to, it appears, Bracknell Forest Private. So I don't have any of this. I haven't seen it, unfortunately, unless it's somewhere else.
Yeah, I can answer. So all councillors receive the mod.gov agendas to your email account. You should be notified when a new agenda is on. And as commission members, you would be on that. Did everyone else receive it? Yeah.
I think there's a problem with I don't have access to Bracknell Forest Private, so none of that information is available.
Right, okay. I wasn't aware of that. Sorry, Mike, I can
No,
take that back
it's
and
just that
sort
I've
it.
looked on Christoph's and he's got it and I haven't,
setting.
so I'm not
Okay.
getting some things through.
Oh no, apologies for that. I will definitely take that back. That's an IT issue we can resolve. Sorry. But no, it was issued 5 days working days in advance.
The background to that is that I don't feel that I'm in a position to take a decision on this proposal at all, because I did not have really access to the information on time. So none of the three options which are presented are, from my point of view, appropriate for the situation, and I would really propose to defer this to the next meeting. Thank you.
Chair, if I can help.
Yes, please.
Just in terms of where we are in the process. So I think Councillor Barnard just raised the point in terms of what the protocol should be. So apologies, members, if we've not made that clear. So what should happen is with any report, the chair opens the item, and if an officer presentation is required, then you can have an officer presentation, which I've just done. After I finish my presentation, you can ask me factual questions, and I will try and answer those factual questions. Once the questions to the officer have been completed, then the chair or whoever will propose the motion, and that will open the debate side. So the last member comments, I think, would be normally within the debate side of the conversation. During the debate, officers are quiet. We've done our part, and it's really then for members to come up with a view of whether they want to support something or not, and then that goes to the vote, and then that decision's been made. So I'm highlighting it just so it doesn't look like, and particularly as we're in a public meeting, that members are speaking to officers, because members should go through the chair. but in the debate, obviously, it's just around what your view is. My advice as statutory scrutiny officer is it's absolutely fine to defer this. There's no timetable it sits within. This is the first meeting, so that's why the officers have made sure that it's presented timely to the commission, so the commission has the opportunity to come to a view. So that view is absolutely fine, but it's not an officer decision, if you understand. It's really once you go into the debate side and then do your vote in terms of process. Hopefully that helps in terms of just guiding this first meeting.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know Councillor Barnard has something to say.
Yeah, my question is to the clerk and to the officer. It's my understanding that the full agenda, including the recommendations and all the reports, were actually placed in the public domain in the appropriate time before the meeting the agenda. So it is my understanding that there is no reason why any member of this commission did not have access to or could see the reports. And if mod.gov was not working effectively, actually I've just checked, you can go onto the public website against the meeting agenda, and all the information, all the reports have been up there for the required amount of time. And it's a fail-safe backup in all situations, is my understanding.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to point out that the option 2 is effectively a deferment and a reconsideration of the panel's recommendations. So isn't it possible to go for that one, and all those worries will be dealt with, and everything will be, you know, everything will be up for review if you want to go a long way with it, or if you want to just do a little tweak. I think these reviews were, I mean, the reports and recommendations were done pretty thoroughly, but I'm sure that the new administration should absolutely have a look and see if there's any more emphasis on climate change or whatever needs to be done. It does need to go past the new administration.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Varno?
I'm really troubled by that comment, because actually there was an objectivity to these reports. And, you know, we've had a presentation which shows actually we're here to support the council's work and not necessarily reconsider everything in that. So my concerns are twofold. One is the information is available and has been published. If colleagues want to actually defer and look at these a different way, the principal reason is because I'm hearing that the administration wants to look at them again, which is fundamentally, if we're saying that they're not objective, if they don't actually, you know, make recommendations on the basis of evidence presented to this commission in good faith, and you know, it's a non-party political comment because it's an absolute fact, then I'm troubled by the suggestion that actually the administration might or might not want to take reviews forward, because actually the great thing about overview and scrutiny is that we have that objective ability to look at that. So I would hope that a mechanism can be seen where these things can be actually addressed quickly. Because let's face it, the child sexploitation one is actually hugely important to the safety of children and young people in Bracknell Forest, and has certainly never been a party political issue. So I would rather hope that actually maybe a basis is recommendations can be taken forward, maybe tweaked in some regards, but certainly not past an administration, because actually it's the function of scrutiny to challenge. And if we're going to say that actually we're going to look at reviews for that reason, I'd be profoundly uncomfortable. If we want to take them further and do additional work, fine. But I'm sorry, Councillor Brown, I would not accept the fact that we want the new administration to take a look at the work and reviews done. Either they stand by the evidence presented to them in the objective manner they were reported, or they don't. If they don't, then look at them again. But I would need to be persuaded that there was evidence to suggest that they weren't carried out impartially and independently early on.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mackenzie Brown. Boyle.
Boyle. Can I just say that we must remember that those panels were cross-party. So let's take that into account too.
Councillor Watts.
I was also going to say that, well, I have no problem with the proposals and they have all been delayed. So if anybody hasn't been able to read the material, perhaps they could abstain from the vote so that we can progress with the suggested proposals.
Councillor Temperton?
No way the administration, I can assure you, will want to review everything that is gone before. And I would just like to say, I have every confidence these were looked at really, really thoroughly. And that child exploitation was really, really important at the time. And I think it would be really good to move on and to look at new things for that are on the new plan, and and we need to consider new things. That's my view.
Thank you, Councillor Temperton. Can I ask you, Councillor Abel, would you be happy to abstain then, given the views of everybody else?
But can I ask that we address these technical issues, because it is really significant, so all members can be empowered. But I do know that, Louise, that you do actually send out messages to make sure people have seen that. But, you know, it's tricky sometimes because mod.gov has its quirks. So I fully understand it might have been challenging.
You know, getting used to it.
Absolutely.
It's just a new IT system, so yeah, bear with us, but absolutely we'll
Yeah, no.
sort that out afterwards.
Yeah, I just want to say I have a valid invitation since today. I have 3 cancelled invitation by the Modern Gov board. So it's really kind of how to say, a bit tricky. Okay.
Afterwards, yeah.
Thank you.
Noted.
Is there any further questions or debate on agenda item number 7?
Would you like me to propose that we accept the recommendations that are put forward for further discussion?
Thank you very much.
Going to the executive.
Yep.
Are you happy to second
Yes.
that? Thank you. That's seconded. Thank you.
So it seems we're all agreed on, or nearly all agreed on, option 1 as set out in the report. So thank you, Councillor Barnard.
It might be helpful if we actually voted, so the abstentions can be noted for the reasons that are given. So
Okay, let's have a vote.
So could you raise your hand if you're in favour of option 1? And if you're not in favour of option 1, could you raise your hands, please?
I'm not a member of the committee. I'm just a substitute, so I can't vote. Is that right? Thank you.
If you're abstaining, can you put your hands up, please? Lovely, thank you.
Well, thank you everyone, and that brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. If members of the Commission wish to attend the briefing following this meeting, please end this meeting and enter the next one. That's to those online. Please can Democratic Services confirm when the meeting has stopped being broadcast?